Most of us who work independently, whether we coach or consult, or even many of us who work directly with clients for an employer, don't really think about what could go wrong in that relationship. Maybe that's because we pride ourselves on our professionalism, or because we expect it from others, or because it can be unthinkable that someone in that kind of relationship could do you wrong. But clients can, and they do engage in all kinds of wrong behaviors, and often that takes us by surprise. I'm Kelly Dravenholm. I'm an independent anthropological consultant, and today I'll be discussing what happens when things go wrong. What goes wrong? Why does it go wrong? Why we may react less well than we could, and what to watch out for. Thank you so much for joining me for this talk, and happy 8th of March to everybody who celebrates it, especially all you ladies out there. Now, let's start with the phrasing. What do I mean when I say clients doing you wrong? Well, I know it sounds very old-fashioned, and at other times I do refer to this behavior as clients doing you ill, which probably ages me right into the Bridgerton era and beyond, but there is a reason why I choose these almost nondescript terms, and that's because they need to describe a wide range of behaviors that we may all experience at some point, or that you have seen your team members experience, or you've experienced them yourself already. What behaviors are we talking about? Let's take a look. I divide the behaviors broadly into 4 groups. There's the financial, the physical, the mental, and the professional group. Now, the financial group, you are experiencing behaviors that impact you somehow financially. Now, this can take many forms. There are clients who don't want to pay. Either they try to bully you in some way, or maybe they are trying to haggle prices down. They may try to manipulate you, including into getting information and work for free way past is what is acceptable, even if you do engage in pro bono work. They may not actually pay on time, and they may ghost you the moment payment comes up. The professional group, so the second group, is down to professional behavior. You may have a client who looks you up specifically even, but then flips the coin and tries to intimidate you or question your professionality, or they may badmouth you whether or not you actually even worked with them to a third party. Now, this one is hard because you may not even know that it happened. I know of cases where a client or a prospective client would constantly complain about what was a normal procedure of ordering specific items that was completely standard. It didn't last any longer than expected, was more expensive than expected. And obviously, of course, your gender, your race, mixed background, sexual orientation, and so forth may be brought in as a quote unquote proof that you are less than. Mental group targets your mental health. This can be anything from bullying and manipulating to various forms of harassing, such as sending complaints about really trifling details in your interactions, or cold shouldering you and then complaining that you did not send another email. It can be trying to push you to doubt yourself, or disrespecting the schedule you set down, including by trying to reach you with various demands out of the blue when you made sure that you told them that they definitely knew that you were not available, including at night or at odd hours. It's a form of invasion of your professional and mental space, if you want. Now, the physical group is whatever happens physically. We might be talking about stalking and physically popping up to intimidate you, physical violence and threat of violence, displays of their own physical strengths, such as flipping chairs or tables, or throwing things, or crushing cups, or what have you. It can also be sexual advances, especially those that do not cease after you firmly state that you are not interested, or even actual sexual motivated assaults. Now, much, but not all of this may be considered criminal behavior by law, depending on where you live. But I find that especially for people who have their own businesses, especially a small business, and who often work alone, the existence of the law doesn't necessarily mean much. Bullying may be legally banned, as is sexual harassment, as is stalking, as is refusing payment. But can you really be sure that you will be heard? And of course, rather worryingly, can you really afford to cut contact with the client, especially if times are hard? Similarly, those who work with someone else may find, or for someone else, may find themselves in a pinch, Maybe their boss or team leader doesn't want to hear about troublesome behavior. I've seen a lot of that. Maybe they just want them to, keep the client happy so that their financial and professional relationship can go on. Even with frequent non-paying or late paying clients, some team leaders and managers inexplicably still try to hold on to those clients and expect that their underlings are going to suddenly somehow perform miracles rather than cut their losses and look for another client. And that may be true even when their business isn't doing so badly that they couldn't afford it and is actually being harmed by staying in this relationship. Now, I'm sure that there are behaviors I'm not even covering here that many of you have experienced, but as this is a short talk, I'm going to move on into the most important question. Why do we do this? Why do we allow clients to cause us harm, whatever that harm may be? Now, I think reasons vary somewhat. There is definitely the financial pressures, especially those of us who work alone, depend on our earnings, which aren't steady, which opens us up to all kinds of exploitation that we may go with because we feel that we can't afford to say no. And sadly, that may indeed be the case sometimes. It may be almost impossible to say no if you need to pay the bills and business has been slow. I know this isn't what most of us want to hear, but it is a stark daily reality for many people, be it people who work for themselves or who work in traditional employment, but receive no support or very little support from their overlings and can't necessarily quit or quit quickly, even if the situation is actually unbearable and untenable. There may also be lack of experience, especially when we are young and just starting something. We may be, I wouldn't say naive, it's not really naive, but really enthusiastic. And when we get enthusiastic, we can get overly positive, expecting that others will be nice to us if we are nice to them. That may be true for most people, but for some, this is unfortunately a sign of weakness, and that weakness obviously is there to be exploited. High professional standards we hold may also be a quote-unquote problem because we'd never expect certain behaviors in work context. But most importantly, there is this wish to not engage in conflict. And this is the one I, as an anthropologist, find really important because we are often taught it over and over and over again. For many people and in many societies, being taught not to be confrontational starts from the cradle on. It may be stronger for women, where traditional or enforced behaviors especially expect us to be quiet and meek and obedient, but even men often engage in appeasement rather than direct conflict. And obviously, by conflict, I don't necessarily mean fists are flying now, but just literally saying enough is enough. Now, part of this is down to what we could call civilized society expectations. Basically, we grow up with and operate under the idea that certain behaviors are not on and that we should not engage with them. So instead, we try to find the next best thing to do. For instance, try to ignore the behavior. Maybe we deem it a one-off, or we appease it by trying to cater to the client who is clearly overstepping. And obviously, appeasement is a big mammal thing, which we obviously share as humans. So we may feel even acutely embarrassed by the situation we are in. We may self-blame. Why did I do X? Why didn't I do Y? How is my behavior causing Z? Now, abusive behavior is not an accident. Very, very, very rarely, a mental health problem can cause sudden emotional explosions, but it most definitely doesn't cause manipulation, and it doesn't cause negative financial practices. Most of the time, the abusers know very, very well what they are doing, and they are doing it because we are letting them. Now, by this, I do not mean to say that we are at fault. What I mean to say is that they know to expect us to follow social rules, and they've probably got enough experience with other people they behave this way too, to know that they can push us and not expect us to push back. So this is what I would suggest to anyone in this situation, and this is what I do myself and what I counsel others to do. First things first, assess the situation. Are you in actual real danger, or is anyone on your team or even in your life? Because stalkers may follow you home, right? Is anybody in danger? If that is the case, figure out what you need to do to be safe and to keep others safe. The next step should be to try to call the police. Don't joke around when it comes to safety. Try to always, and I really, I want to make this clear to you and to any colleagues that might be in similar situations, so please pass that on. You really want to have a clear way out if you are alone with someone who has been behaving in an inappropriate way. Men, this means you too, not just the women and not just the sexual minorities. Whatever the motivation behind the physical violence, whether it is sexual or not, it can cause you real harm and can theoretically cost you your life. Much less dramatically, if we're talking about financial, professional, and mental health related inappropriate behaviors, assess the damage. You will need to know a lot of things. What happens, for instance, if you withdraw from a contract? Can you even withdraw from this contract? What kind of financial loss are you looking at with a non-paying client? What can you do to just recover from bullying behavior? How can you safeguard your professional reputation and so forth? Now, the next step is always to do your best to reset the boundaries, especially early on. If this is a very first eventuality, very first event, you may be able to nip it in the bud. Say someone behaves unprofessionally or tries to bully you, disengage, then firmly assert that you do not feel that their behavior is acceptable. You do not need to give reasons because A, they know what they did, B, they know it's not acceptable, and C, to explain can start to sound like you're apologizing, and you can actually make yourself feel like you are apologizing, which kind of defeats the point. In case of physically problematic behaviors, if you have to and if you can, call security. Flipping tables is not an accepted form of expressing anything. Trying to corner someone is not an acceptable way of asking someone out. We call it asking for a reason. That's not it. The third ideal step is to finish your working relationship with that client pronto. But as we said, that's not always possible. You may be in a situation where you really can't do that for various reasons, but here's what I suggest. First of all, make sure you know your rights and the letter of the law in case you need them, whether you are working for yourself or at an office. If the situation escalates, including if you already warned your overlings, which you should, you'll need to know precisely how whatever happens relates to what the law says and what any workplace protections say. Also, if you are an overling and you're listening to this, please do pay attention. Pay attention when you are told these things. They are important for your team and for the well-being of your company as well. The second step, try to keep a detailed diary of what went wrong and how and when. Not only do these things help in case the matter escalates to the legal level, they are also something that enables us to sit down with this information and really look at it. Perpetrators often make others feel like they are exaggerating or imagining things, or maybe they're even accusing them of making it up. Now, keep good records of any materials that may be of help. If you're getting toxic emails, save them in a specific folder that only you can get to in case they suddenly get legs. If you're getting followed, call the police, take pictures. If you have bruises, make sure a friend or a loved one or even a colleague sees them and that they take pictures too. Thirdly, take the matter seriously. Even if things have not escalated far, be it in any of those four groups, once unprofessional behavior raises its ugly head, it's not going to get better. And it's not unlikely that it's going to get worse. Be aware that whatever good you think having a professional relationship with this client does, it's likely not worth it in the long run, especially because you are essentially wasting your work hours and your talent on someone who is actually just bent on causing trouble. Professional harm can influence your career. It can have a heavy impact. Mental health issues will influence your efficacy and life-work balance. Financial harm is really bad for running your business, whether you work alone or as a part of a company. And all kinds of physical harm can threaten you in very real ways, from your health to your safety and even to your life. If you really can't get out of the work relationship, still follow these 3 steps. But additionally, whenever possible, make sure that there are witnesses or at least one witness to your interaction with this person. No matter what the problem is, someone you can trust. Being aware of how bad the situation is helpful. Maybe this is a coworker who can help you to convince your boss or team leader that the problem definitely does exist, or someone else who can theoretically offer some kind of protection. Rethink your safety. For instance, if the client is physically or sexually threatening, trying to make sure you're always in a position where something big like a desk is between you, or that you are only meeting, honestly, seriously, do only meet in public and in well-lit areas during usual work hours. I know a lot of us tend to accommodate, but it's not necessarily a good practice. Now, decline meeting at home, anywhere you might need to execute a complicated getaway or after hours. If possible, learn some basic self-defense. Honestly, everybody should carry a panic button if that works where you are. And I know a lot of people who do. Make sure you never, if at all possible, turn your back on this person. Ideally, if you will have to, make sure there is a reflecting surface, like a small mirror you can glance into to make sure that they aren't sneaking up on you. On that note, don't offer refreshments, because often enough, making your coffee or your tea or whatever will occupy your hands and eyes, and that makes you a more ready target. Also, and I guess this is a little sociocultural gem, offering refreshments is about establishing a form of guest friendship, a positive relationship, even kinship if you're working together in an extended period of time. Now, we often do this completely automatically, but they lost that right the moment they behaved badly for the first time. And obviously, finally, find a way to change this situation for good if it's at all possible, either by lodging a complaint over your boss's head, even if you need to, or by changing jobs, for that matter, by finding a new client. This may take time and it may take energy, and I do not blame, and I want to make this really, really clear, I do not blame anyone who feels that they can do it, especially in this economy. It is very daunting to take up proverbial arms against someone at any point, especially right now, and especially if the system isn't necessarily supportive of us. But sometimes the best thing you can do is to make sure that this person is no longer in any way in position to have access to you, whatever way they choose to do you harm. Now, I hope this talks helps you, whether you are in a bad situation or you're just thinking ahead. I hope you're just thinking ahead. Above all, I want the listeners to remember that we are all taught in general to behave like nothing happened, and even doubt things that, that do happen. We're just going to wonder, are they actually as bad as they are? This is sociocultural behavior, and we aren't at fault because we are just following it. This is what our society works on. We're not the anomaly. The perpetrator is. So it's utterly normal to feel a little bit adrift when we meet with harmful behaviors. But I do hope that today I managed to shed light on what you can do if you find yourself in a bad situation involving a client. Thank you all for watching.